Have you ever made trips on the river and then folded in a 150K pot right after you made trips?
I have not.
Charles
ever done
has. He's about to. And we're
Yeah.
going to show you how. We're going to talk about it because this hand is kind of whack.
It's a little devious.
I think it's a little bit dark and a
can't-
little bit rough around the
You
edges.
can't trust it. It's mischievous.
Are you going to rhyme this whole time?
Maybe.
That would be sublime. Is going to open the hand with queen jack of clubs. Andy 3-bets the tens. Normal stuff.
Yeah.
We get the call. We get the amazing flop for Andy. So happy. He wishes there weren't two hearts, but ace high with the 10 on it. Pretty great.
We take it.
Andy goes for the check raise.
Cool.
Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
I like it for a few reasons. If Charles has an ace, if we bet, we're gonna get called. But if we check raise, we make more money. So I like that because I don't think Charles is folding to Andy if Andy's check raising this board.
And
if Charles has an ace. If Charles doesn't have an ace, he might fire away when we check because he could have like king queen or something like that,
Or queen jack,
or
perhaps.
queen jack. Be betting semi bluffing. We get to charge more by check raising that way too. It feels like Charles is going to bet all his draws and all his top pair hands and maybe some other bad like no equity bluffs. We get value from all of that, and then we get to charge more for the hands that want to continue.
Right. And
I like it.
And we have effectively the nuts. It's
Yes.
very rare for Charles to have ace here.
I think we just can't. If he has ace, he gets it all no matter what. We just never worry about that.
Congratulations to Charles if that's the case.
Yeah.
It is not. And we go to the turn because Charles is obligated to call with the open ender at this stack depth, even though he has no backdoor draws of any type for suits. But here we are on the turn, which is a nominal improvement to Charles's hand, but really not a great card for Charles.
Right. Like, when Andy check raises, okay, he has hearts sometimes. Maybe he's got some weird backdoor stuff going on with the spades sometimes, which improves, and so he could continue. But this card isn't really what we're looking for, right? We're
No.
looking to make a big hand, and that is a king or an 8. It is not second pair as it's when Andy is now going to bet 25,000 at us. That's full pot. If we call this, which by the way we are going to as Charles, I can tell you that we're going to have less than a pot size bet back. We need to be way, way, way deeper to comfortably call here.
Yeah, this is just a bad card for Charles. It's not a good card, even though it looks
good.
It looks like it might be good, but there's a big problem that this card creates, which is now if we make our straight, we're never getting paid. It's just impossible for Andy to pay us on a king or an 8 now, unless he's chopping with us, and then we're not getting paid. We're getting half the pot, right?
It's not that we're never getting paid, to be clear. Like, hearts could miss, Andy could have a set, and he might decide to call sometimes. But it's much harder to get paid for sure, right?
It makes it very, very difficult. Our implied odds are slim to none.
They go down significantly. I don't know if about slim to none. They certainly decrease, and we don't like that.
Right. Another problem with it is that it's a spade. So if Andy did have one of those wacky back doors, now sometimes we can make our straight and loose in ways that aren't hearts. Now spades can do that too.
That's half of the outs that we were looking for. They're just poof away from being super clean, and we have the nuts. Now, I think if we make the straight with spades, we're not folding. Probably even with hearts, we're not folding, quite frankly, if we only have 64,000 left in a 75K pot and Andy shoves on us. We're probably just calling if we make a straight, but it's not great.
I might have to disagree with that, but it's a little bit too short of a video to get into that. So we're not going to. The thing is ultimately that it's a pot-sized bet, and there are 4 cards that we feel good about, and we're unlikely to get paid on those 4 cards anyway.
Right.
So all of this tells me that we should fold.
Here's the only reason why we could reasonably call it. It's if we think Andy is being very spewy. Now, Andy in the past has been, and if we think he can be super out there, and we've played against guys like this who can have kind of almost any 2 cards in these spots.
Yeah, but Andy's not quite that guy.
Andy's not that guy, but he can have. But in the past, anyway, sometimes he'll show up with some very weird holdings in these kinds of spots. This was years ago, though. I don't know if he's still doing this. Then we can call more because the queen is showdownable, and we believe that we actually have the best hand sometimes.
That means we're going to have the chutzpah to call on the deuce of diamonds river if Andy shoves.
At least some of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we need just to keep that in mind that if like we call here and a brick comes, we probably have to call the river sometimes because we're not getting the right odds or implied odds or otherwise to call just to make our straight.
Yeah. So I think it's a fold.
I agree. I think it's a fold. It's weird because you improve, but I think it's a fold.
But Charles calls.
Okay.
The siren song of the straight draw on the pair that just got him.
We are in position at least. That helps a little.
Sweet. I hate it.
It helps a little.
I hate it. River's the queen of diamonds. We did improve.
I mean, that's the best queen
You know
left.
who else improved?
Andy.
Andy made a full house.
He made a full full house.
And it's very easy for Andy to move in here when the SPR is less than 1. It's not an issue. If Charles has ace queen, so be it. Congratulations, Charles.
Charles is going to have ace queen sometimes, and he might have queen 9 or queen 10 sometimes if there's only 110 left. But it doesn't matter because, as Grant's saying, the stack to pot ratio, SPR, it's 64,000 chips and there's 75 in there. Andy figures if he's beat, he's always calling anyway. Charles could actually move in for value with worse hands like king jack or even trip queen sometimes if we check. So we don't worry about that. We're moving in for value to just try and get called by all these kinds of hands.
And some bluff catches. If Andy is the guy that you described on the turn, then Charles is supposed to call with some of his aces.
Absolutely. Like ace jack, reasonable call there where you block king jack.
Right. Okay. So Charles goes into this tank, as we see.
Andy's like, yay, he doesn't have me beat.
Yeah, so that's good news. That's always good news when you have a hand that is not the nuts, but it's very good.
Yep.
In this tank, Charles must be thinking, why the hell did I call the turn?
I imagine he's thinking, why the hell that? Well, because if he doesn't, taking on the queen of diamonds means you don't think Andy's bluffing very much.
Not too frequently.
If we think he's bluffing a lot, it's an easy call.
If you think he's totally balanced with his bluffs and his value here, which I don't think almost anybody is, but if you think that he is, then it's obviously an easy call.
Right.
On this card. Because as you pointed out in our podcast, Jonathan, this is the 5th best individual card in the deck for Charles.
I think so.
After the non-Spader heart kings and the non-Spader heart 8s. It's the queen of diamonds, the only remaining queen that does not make any flushes.
I'm not totally sure if the 8 of spades and the king of spades are better or not. I got to tell you, that's really close, but whatever. It's a big fight for the 5th best card.
It's a top tier card.
It is. It's not the best, but it's really good.
Still, my instinct is to want to fold. And I know it's an incongruent thought process to call the turn and then fold on the river if we're only really going to call on 4 cards in the entire deck, right? That's not a good thought process, but I'm forgetting about that right now. I'm thinking about the value proposition in this moment on the river here. Unless Andy has been showing us that he's in massive spew mode, I don't see us winning often enough to make this call. It's just like Andy does have king jack of spades and king jack of hearts in his range.
He does.
He also has a ton of full houses in his range. He might even have ace queen himself. It's less likely than the sets because he check raised the flop. I think he's more likely just to continue on the flop with that hand. But he could have some ace queen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he's definitely got 10, 10, 9, 9, and ace ace in his range.
Oh, for sure. He's got those things in his range. The thing that would make me, first of all, as you're saying, like we have to completely forget about our thought process on the turn to even consider, in my opinion, folding on the river.
I mean, sure, but that's how we should think, right?
Once we're on the river.
Yes, once we're on the river, we should only think about what is the best expected value.
That's right. That's true. However, I do think that Andy, at least in the past, has been spewy enough and out there enough that we probably shouldn't fold.
I mean, if Andy just has a small bit, like amounting to 5 to 8 combos of random suited connectors, then of course we have to call.
And they could all be low hearts, you know? And if you want to do low hearts and some low spades, because there's some backdoor spades and he took a shot, even better.
Right.
Now, how often does he have that stuff? Like you said, it doesn't have to be that often for this to be a call because we don't beat any value, but there isn't that much value. There's just more than anything
obvious.
we have.
It's just very obvious.
Yeah, it's just staring us in the face.
And the bluffs are not obvious, right? Because if Andy had hearts, which is the type of hand that they might check raise that never got here on the river, I don't know if Andy's doing this, but that is among the worst hands to bluff.
Yeah.
Because that means Charles is less likely to have hearts himself.
So the interesting thing about this, so Charles is going to fold, right? Yeah. As you said in the beginning. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of amazing and kind of beautiful.
It's a good fold.
However, when we're on the river, we do want to think the way you're talking about, which is like, okay, I don't want to get caught up in what my thought processes were before to force me to make a decision here. I want to just do my best to make the best decision right now. But this also does go to the importance of planning.
Of course.
So on the turn, we should have already been thinking about this kind of a thing and thinking about what cards can I call on the river? Because if I can't call the queen of diamonds when I get shoved into, I should never put money in on the turn, right?
Not $25K, not a pot-sized bet.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If it was a $5,000 bet, fine, or even a $10,000 bet. But this is a pot-sized bet, and now I'm going to have $64K left, and there's going to be $75K in the pot. We need to plan this out so we're not in this spot in the first place.
Agreed. I think that was a big mistake. I think the fold on the river, while actually correct, in my opinion, is also technically correct unless we have a lot more data on Andy. I think the turn is a huge mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I think the turn is a huge mistake. I would find a call on the river because of the things I've seen Andy do in the past. I just would have to give him enough bluffs there that I would think I would hang in there and call. I would lose $64,000.
Yeah, me and Charles are sitting over here with 64K, and you're sitting there with nothing.
Nah, actually, both of us would have folded the turn and lost the same amount.
Yeah, that's true.